not only robs women of their lives, but also leaves behind shattered families and communities.
Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to Shattered Lives documentary. And today we are privileged to have a legal expert who is going to take us through the legal dimensions that entail the steps of curbing cases of femicide.
Hi everyone, my name is Regina Irene. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, a notary public, and a commissioner of I practice in Nairobi under the name of MR and Associates Company Limited.
What is your general understanding of femicide?
Femicide by definition is the deliberate violence against women by virtue of the fact that they're just women. It's a type of gender-based violence perpetuated by the patriarchal society that we live in that perceives women as lesser than men.
And also, how does the legal system address the cases of violence, including maybe the investigation, the persecutions, and also maybe the sentencing?
Alright. Now, unfortunately, in Kenya, the rule of the thumb in Kenya is that for a crime to be prosecuted, the crime has to be spelled out by statute, where the statute defines the crime, including defining what constitutes such a crime, and also proceed to prescribe as a fine or sentence for it. Now, unfortunately, in Kenya, under our current legislation, we do not have a legislation that outrightly defines femicides as one of the crimes prosecutable under the Penal Code. So we can only borrow from the existing legislation. Currently, we use the local laws, of course, starting with the Constitution of Kenya 2010, being the Supreme Law of the land. We also have the Penal Code. We also have the Sexual Offences Act. We also have the Protection Against Domestic Violence procedures. Now, in regards to how the investigation is done as regards femicide, it can only be the crime can only be prosecuted under the legislation that we call the Penal Code. The two sections that we can make reference to when prosecuting femicide cases under either a Sexual Offence Act or an offence against the person, which the Penal Code describes Sexual Offences Act because those are the offences that perpetuate or ultimately lead to femicides. It starts as a sexual offence or an offence against the person and then escalates to the fatality of the victim. So currently under the Sexual Offences Act, as provided for in the Penal Code, we have examples of such acts like rape, defilement, abduction, indecent assault, procuration, which is procuring a person for the purpose of engaging them in prostitution against their will. There's detention for immoral purposes. There's prostitution and also unnatural offences, which generally was introduced to curb. The definition of rape is very specific to having carnal knowledge. So the introduction of unnatural offences brings in around offences such as bestiality, sodomization, and forcing objects through a woman's vagina. There's also now the second scope under which femicides can be prosecuted is through the offences against the person, which are basically now assaults, aggravated assault, murder, manslaughter, and attempted murder. The procedure ordinarily starts as a complaint. The victim complains to the police. The investigation is usually conducted by the National Police. So you lodge a complaint to the police. The police reports that in the OB. They start collecting the evidence, which is the process that is called investigations. Once they are convinced that the complaint has merit, then they apprehend the perpetrator. The perpetrator is arraigned in court, where they are charged through a document that is called a charge sheet, which outlined again the crime that he has committed and the law that describes that crime, and then they are invited now to go through a process that is called plea taking, where the charge is read to them and they plead whether they are guilty or not guilty. Once if the perpetrator chooses they are guilty, then the process of judgment and sentencing follows. If not, then the trial process kicks in while the perpetrator is still in remand. The collection of evidence, the process of investigating and ultimately prosecuting the crime is a joint effort between the National Police, the Directorate of Public Prosecutions, who are the ones who conduct the prosecutions, and then the judicial officers, who is the magistrate who is going to hear oversee the trial and ultimately give a judgment.
What are some of the significant challenges that come through maybe when justice is trying to be served to a victim or a survivor of this violence?
Okay, I think firstly, one of the biggest legal hurdle that the prosecutor would face is, like I said, there is no express law that defines femicide. So you have to borrow from related legislation. That would present a difficult situation where the circumstances of the crime do not fit the existing crimes that are described elsewhere. So the moment you plead the wrong charge in the charge sheet, at the point of plea taking, the counsel for the defense is going to point out, actually apply to have the charges struck out. And once that is struck out, then the victim is back to square one. So I think the lack of actual laws defining and prescribing the penalties for femicide is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing. The other challenge, in my perspective, that I think is quite instrumental is Kenya, as we are like many other African societies, we are patriarchal society in nature, meaning there is this perception that men are the superior gender. So ordinarily, there is some traditional and cultural ideologies that perceive women as properties. So even in the aspect that our laws, to some extent, like I said, the penal code does not criminalize marital. No, actually, the Sexual Offences Act does not criminalize marital rape. They perceive it can't happen, that's what they say. There's an express provision that actually says that exempts people who are legally married from being charged for spousal rape, which as we know, knowing and experiencing it in our communities is the most prevalent way of sexual violence. It starts with a person that knows you, a person that you have a conjugal or a spousal relationship with. So the fact that us as a nation, us as a tradition, even when a victim goes to a police officer or a police station to report, first they'll be asked, are you sure? Say if they escaped the perpetrator and probably they go to report, it's like they are put on trial. It's them to prove that this happened to them, which ideally is not the way the law is supposed to work. The other hurdle, in my opinion, the customary practices that are embraced in some communities, customary and religious practices, something like early marriages and FGM, they are contributors to femicide, because like I said, it will start as early marriage, before you know it, it escalates to a femicide crime. There is also societal practices. For instance, we've had people or prosecutors employed by the Directorate of Public Prosecutions who practice in areas like Turkana or Jir or something, who say that the communities there literally are not governed by the law. You will have a matter in court and you'll have a victim, and then the victim will be compromised or convinced or coerced to withdraw their testimony or their case and be told to embrace ADR, while our penal code actually is very clear that only misdemeanors can be subjected to alternative dispute resolution. For criminal cases or criminal liability matters, they should be subjected to the court process. But now in some communities, they just embrace the fact that we talk, that's what you're told, we talk around here. And the fact that you're not even from that ethnicity or that race, you're forced to you feel like you're out of place, and ultimately the case collapses. So At the end of the day, the prosecutor may be willing to prosecute the case, but if the victim is not there to testify, then that's how the case will be defeated. As regards our current laws, again, another misgiving of the penal code is it does not criminalize acts like wife or husband battery, again leading to perpetuating the notion that our husband is entitled to beat the wife to bring them to order sometimes, which is what the society believes. When it comes to now the legal process, when now the complaint has actually been lodged, the victim is ready to testify, the challenge that we get in court is that in a criminal procedure or in a criminal court, the burden of proof on the person, the complainant, is beyond reasonable doubt, which is almost impossible to prove beyond reasonable doubt, as opposed to civil liability cases where it's on a balance of probability. That is even made worse by our rules of evidence, which is what the court relies on when taking the testimony of the perpetrators, of the victim. Sorry, like for instance, there's something that is called a strict rule of evidence application in sexual offences, where if the victim is a minor of tender age, she is further required, despite testifying against what the perpetrator did with them, they are required to have another separate collaborator for the charge to hold water and actually lead to a conviction. So really that is very discouraging, and you can imagine this is a child of tender age. It's like you're really putting her on trial and telling her you need somebody else to come and collaborate, whatever it is that you're trying to say. We have prosecutors who are not motivated or easily compromised into throwing the case, and again then that brings the victim again back to scratch without any way to access justice.
Also, how can the legal systems engage with victims and the survivors to ensure that their voices are heard through the legal systems?
Okay, now unfortunately, as it stands right now, there are no legal reparations for the victims. The most that the legal process does is hear and determine the complaints, which I've said are not a guaranteed success because of whatever we discussed. Now, in my opinion, I think we can start at a point of mobilizing first funds or resources to be allocated to survivors of the femicides. That includes setting up shelters, counseling, legal aids to help them access the justice, and then collaborate with the government agencies and civil societies to be able to reach, to have those legal services reach the people at the communities. I think also because right now there is no any data on femicide cases, it's just what is being presented in the media. There was a 2014 report on gender-based violence, I think, which 2014 is 10 years ago, which said that out of 45% of women have actually been victims of gender-based violence. So, but currently we don't have any tracking of femicide cases. Even when a victim goes to report, the police the tracking system is not based on the genders. It's just a uniform tracking. So I think we can also establish data collection processes where we can be able to track the cases of femicide in order to attempt to identify what are the underlying factors that lead to gender-based violence and ultimately femicides, and now approach those the government agencies with such data for coming up with measures to try and curb it. The other way I think we can make reparations is at the point of reporting, which is a police station. I feel it's very critical to the victim at the point of, because even then the emotions are quite low. It has been a discussion in the legal fraternity that some police stations should we should establish a police officer or a designated police officer in every police station to handle gender-based violence crimes, train them, and those police officers should be trained on how to address the victims, how to question them, how to collect the evidence, to also ensure that once the perpetrator is not presented in court, even the evidence that is presented in court will hold water and will secure conviction against the perpetrator. There was before. I think we can also may improve on the access to justice, because as it is right now, everybody is convinced that the court is has a price tag, and if you cannot meet the price tag, then there is no point of even approaching the court. So changing the mindset of people that there is actually access to justice, and actually demonstrating that you can access these courts, you can be able to get judgments can be delivered quite quickly, and you can actually even get protection orders like a court order against by a victim against a perpetrator. Yeah. Once you cheer on or once you shame a victim, you are encouraging a perpetrator. And there's this notion of Kenyans of saying, what if it was your sister? It shouldn't even have to come to that. It's basic human decency to treat a fellow human being like you want to be treated. It doesn't have to be equated to your significant other or to your mother or your sister. So those are my comments as a woman. Legally, I think we have a very long way to go, but there is hope, especially because the stakeholders are now made aware of, and it's a practice that right now we cannot really ignore. It's happening every other week.
I want to thank you so much, Regina, for sharing informative content with us. I hope that you are going to pick one or two things that are going to have an impact on your life. Thank you so much.
We are privileged to have a KCS student who is going to share her insights concerning the matter.
Thank you. My name is Chelsea Tanya Mawana. I'm 24 years, a student at KCA pursuing Bachelor in Arts, Journalism and Digital Media, the current Miss KCA first runners-up, and a mental health advocate. Thank you.
As a media student, what do you think what's the role of media, or what role is media playing in ensuring that maybe these issues or these cases of femicide are being reported?
I think media is playing its role very well. Media is advocating for anti-femicide, and it's playing the role by informing people that femicide is happening, and it's also playing its role by giving information on the cases happening. And also I think the media is taking its part as a gatekeeper to advocate for anti-femicide cases.
How is the media going to ensure that these voices are heard and maybe action is being implemented?
I believe femicide is not an only girl thing, and organizations have come together to curb this thing. There are also government organizations and NGOs that have come together, both men organization and female organizations that have come together to curb this thing, because it's not a female thing, it's a community thing. And I think media is there and is facilitating these organizations and the communication and getting to the community.
As you conclude, maybe you can give us your parting shots.
My parting shot is that femicide is happening, and we as a community, we should not blame each other, like blame girls for being victims or blame the men for taking part in being the villains in the story. I think we as a community, we as media should take part in making femicide to end. I think the media is taking its part, and us as a community, we should spearhead this and make femicide end. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. As we conclude, let us join hands in a mission to end femicide and create a safer space for all women across the globe.